Welcome to Living with Dr. Monica Shah, where we discuss different ways of living our lives and finding fulfillment in a world that often pushes a single version of success, timeline, and identity. Living fully means honoring your truth, and charting our own path on a road less traveled can feel hard. Whether you've chosen a non-traditional life or life chose it for you, this show is here to support your journey and remind you that you're not alone. Okay, for a solo show, I am feeling kind of nervous, but I'm going to lean in and do it anyway. It's fitting because today's topic is about all of the mental and physical blocks that can come up when we're embarking on something new. Have you ever wanted to try something, or even just had a curiosity that you wanted to explore, but you never did? For me and many others, I've noticed that there are some common blocks that can come up and get in the way when we are trying something new. Today, we're going to be talking about some of those blocks and how to move through them. The subject matter, this podcast. This podcast has been a journey to get out there. From having the initial idea last spring to the process of putting it together and everything that came up for me during that process to finally launching it this past November, there were a lot of blocks that came up for me, and I definitely thought about ditching the whole thing. But as you can see, I pushed through, and I am continuing to push through all of those blocks because I believe in it and I enjoy the process. And honestly, it has really helped to hear people's feedback, hearing that it's been validating of their experience and even had them think in different ways about life. That is a huge part of my why. And so I keep coming back to that even when these blocks come up for me, even still. I know we live in a world right now where we see the end products of a lot of things, which sometimes makes it feel inaccessible to get to that product yourself. On social media, in the things that people put out there into the world, we see the edited and the curated versions. But what we don't see is all of the work and the self-doubt and the questions that went into getting it to that end product. So what I'm hoping to do here is to pull back the curtain on my process and show the reality of it and how I moved through my own very real mental and physical blocks around putting out this podcast into the world. If there is something that you've been wanting to do or try, I'm hoping that this will help you move through some of your own blocks that come up. Okay. So let's talk about it. So I first had the idea for this podcast back in March 2024, and it had come from years of working with clients, talking to friends, and going through my own process of feeling like you're doing something wrong because your life looks different than the traditional model and timeline of living. What we tend to see around us is you go to school, you find a job, you find a partner, you move into a home together, you have kids, and then you live your life. And that's the model that we tend to see as a successful life. For me, my life has not gone along that path, kind of by circumstance. And so I've had to face the discomfort of living a life that looks different and find ways to accept and enjoy and live this life fully. It's helped me to know people who are living life in all kinds of ways. And so with this podcast, I wanted to give that to people to help share, normalize, validate, and explore the many different ways that there are to live a meaningful life, especially if your path looks different than what you see outside of the traditional timeline and model. So I thought, what better way than a podcast and interviewing these people that I've come across in my life that have helped me expand my definition of living, which brings me to my first block. Time. So I had this idea. I would get really excited when talking about it with people, and I would feel connected to it at those times. But then I didn't have or make time for it. And I kept saying the same thing. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. And the reality is, we don't just have time. We make time for the things that are important to us. For me, I had to accept that even though this idea was really exciting to me, other things just took priority last year. I prioritized work, rest, doing social things, spending time with loved ones. I needed my weekends as breaks, and it just is what it is. So how I moved through the time block was being kind to myself, acknowledging that I was choosing to put my time towards other things, and saying to myself, okay, yeah, I don't have tons of time that I'm making for this podcast right now, but what can I do in the time that I do have? If I have an hour on the weekend, is there something that I can do that can help me feel like I'm working towards this goal rather than focusing on not having enough time, aka not making enough time? I tried to focus on the fact that I do have some time here and there. So I would try to do something at least once a week that related to the podcast, even if it was just thinking of ideas. The second block that came up for me was around just life circumstances. The highs and lows of life pulled me away from doing the podcast. I started a new relationship, which took some time, and then went through an awful breakup. That also took some time. So rather than beating myself up for not working on the podcast throughout all of that, the way that I moved through that block was to just accept that life happens, and that's all a part of my process. And when I feel more ready to put some attention towards this goal that's important to me, I will. So the third block that came up for me was total overwhelm. Like, where do I even start? I was thinking about doing this podcast. However, I had no idea what the technological needs were, how to set it up. I didn't know anybody that was doing any podcasts. I was completely overwhelmed by the idea. And so how I moved through that one, and this took about a year and a half, so it was a process. But how I started to work through the overwhelm was by Googling things, by watching videos, by speaking to anybody that knew anything about podcasting and just starting somewhere. And honestly, that was part of me doing the work on the podcast, was to sit in those questions and try to find information and just start somewhere. Which brings me to my fourth block. I have this tendency to want to learn everything about something before I feel ready to start on it. It helps me feel prepared. It satisfies that analytical part of me. But the thing is, sometimes it can actually get in my way because there is no way to know everything about something before you start it. So in a way, trying to intellectualize and analyze and learn and feel prepared actually acts as a block in itself. So what I did to help appease that analytical part of me was to buy a course on how to make a podcast just to make myself feel better. And honestly, I haven't even finished the course yet. It was really more to help myself feel safer, like I had a step-by-step process that I could just follow. And it did help for that. But then what happened is that before I knew it, it just started taking off. One step would lead to the next, and I didn't even have time to go through the podcast course. So if you feel like you need to learn about something before starting it, go ahead and do that. But just place a limit on yourself to how much you're going to learn before you just start. The fifth block was procrastination. And it was sneaky because I was like, I have to get done all of these other things on my list because I need total focus on the podcast because it's important to me. The problem is, there is always more stuff to do. There are always more things on our to-do lists. So if we keep putting off the thing that we want to do because we have to tend to all of the other things on our to-do lists first, we will never get to the thing that we want to do. After months of putting it off and putting everything else first, it became clear that I would just need to work in the windows of time. For some people, that might mean scheduling a time each week to work on something. For me, scheduling time doesn't often work. My schedule is always changing. And so instead, I just said to myself, I'm going to do something in this area each week. Procrastination can happen for all kinds of reasons. It could be a result of black or white thinking about things. It could be a time management issue. It could be perfectionism, which actually brings me to my next block, which was perfectionism. I kept getting stuck on what is the best way to do this? It's like I was trying to figure out a formula, like there was one best, perfect way to do something, and I just had to figure that out. And then on top of that, I had the perfectionistic belief of, I cannot share this until it's perfect. And you could see how that might get in the way because There is no such thing as perfect. This has been something that has come up for me throughout my life, ever since I was in kindergarten. In fact, I remember my kindergarten teacher telling my parents her drawings are really good, but she needs to hand them in. Even at 5 years old, I was sitting there toiling away at my drawings, trying to make them perfect before handing them in. So through years of working on this, I have learned that perfect does not exist. And even if it's messy, done is better than perfect. And with this podcast, I had to learn that, of course, it's not going to be amazing the first time that I do it. I'm learning. This is part of the process, putting something out there, learning from it, revising it, and getting better over time. In fact, the first time that I recorded a podcast episode, it was with Natasha Bucht over Zoom, and I wanted to focus on her while having the interview. So I hid my self view, not realizing that that is how Zoom would record the episode. Just an image of her and no me. So I learned from that. Yes, it wasn't perfect the first time, and it's a funny story to tell. So if you're dealing with perfectionism, just realize that when you're doing anything for the first time, wanting it to be amazing right out of the gate is actually going to act as a block for you. So just face the fear of putting out something that feels messy. The seventh block was lack of motivation. So for a big chunk of this year, I wasn't feeling connected to the theme of the podcast, living a non-traditional life. I was actually dealing with the challenges that come with living a life that looks different than what you see around you. So it was hard to continue working on the podcast when I wasn't feeling connected to that idea. I felt like a fraud. So what I did was I continued to work on it anyways. And actually, I even recorded Ishita's episode while I was in that funk. I was in this place of questioning things and questioning my own belief in some of these ideas. And yet I had her scheduled for her interview. So I did it. And actually, by doing that interview and reconnecting with some of these ideas of living a non-traditional life, I also reconnected with my why. And the thing with motivation is that we often think that we need to have motivation before we do something. But actually, there's a lot of research that shows the opposite, that motivation comes after we start doing things. It's called behavioral activation, and it's a first-line treatment for depression. So if you're feeling a lack of motivation, just schedule something in that aligns with your goals and your values and what you want to move towards. And then when it comes to that day and that time, just do it, no matter how you feel. And doing that repeatedly will help kickstart your motivation. The eighth thing that came up for me was self-doubt. During the middle of this year, I started questioning the entire idea of doing a podcast. I thought, maybe this is a dumb idea. Maybe I shouldn't even do it at all. I was questioning myself. I was questioning the theme. I was questioning my ability to do the podcast, but there was still this spark inside me that wanted to try. And so how I moved through self-doubt was to say, okay, worst case, I try it out and then I stop. That's allowed. And I'll never know unless I try. That was a whole process in itself, but that way of thinking about it did help me move through the self-doubt. And then there was the block around being vulnerable. I was worried because the podcast would require me to put myself out there. And I thought, what if everybody thinks it's stupid? The biggest thing that came up for me was, what if it just seems super self-involved? Even though I knew that my why was attached to other people and wanting to share something with them, I still started to worry that I would open myself up, put myself out there, and then I would be judged. And so how I moved through that one was to be like, well, yeah, people might judge it. And how would I cope with that if that were to happen? Whenever we put ourselves out there, whenever we share something that's important to us with the world, there are always going to be people who judge it. It's what we do as humans, but we can cope effectively with that kind of thing. We can manage our emotions. We can surround ourselves with people who love us, who love and support us. And we can say to ourselves, you know what? This is not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. And then, of course, there was the block that came up around comparison to others. I would see other people's podcasts or what they were posting on social media and just think, oh my gosh, they're doing it so well. How am I ever going to be able to do that? I don't even know where to start. We compare ourselves to others so much. And often it can act as a block for us moving towards the things that we want to do. The thing is, everybody's just leading their own lives, and you get to lead yours too. Seeing it as everybody is on their own journey, everybody has their own path, really helped me to move through this block of comparing. And really, everybody started somewhere. So I said to myself, just start somewhere and you can modify as you go. And instead of comparing myself to others in a way that would reduce my motivation, I tried to learn from what they were putting out there. Eventually, what I did was set a launch date. I felt like that would give me some accountability and help me move towards a deadline. I love having something external to work towards. I was finding that just having my own internal deadlines wasn't necessarily cutting it for myself. So I put out there that November 1st, I am launching my podcast. And that actually came from the podcast course. And then I set in motion just working towards that deadline. It was a lot. And of course, all of these other projects that I was working on also had deadlines around that time. So I just put my head down and I worked. And honestly, that crunch time actually helped me to just focus on what I was doing and put aside all of those mental blocks that were coming up for me before then. I set the goal of posting the 3 episodes that I had recorded so far, and my launch date was November 1st. However, I did not meet that goal. And that's where my final block came up for me, which was the self-critic. I was so hard on myself about not meeting my launch goal. I was actually in upstate New York with some friends for the weekend, and I had been editing all week, staying up until like 1, and I just had one more episode to finish editing. So I decided to do it in the car. Our car broke down, and as I was madly trying to finish everything up, I had the choice of staying in and working on the editing while all my friends went out to dinner, or to go out with them and enjoy my weekend. And so I did choose that, but actually that was a tough choice to make because my self-critic kept saying, you didn't meet your goal. You failed. This is not what you wanted it to be. There was a little bit of that perfectionism mixed in there. Through talking to my friends and not allowing that self-critic to take total hold, I came to realize that I set the goal. I can change it. And launching with 2 episodes is pretty good. I gave myself some grace and thought, I'm just starting out. And I'm doing a lot of this all on my own. So I gave myself credit for that, rather than beating myself up for not meeting a goal that no one else knew about except for me. Sometimes we feel like we need to be self-critical in order to motivate ourselves. But the thing is, that can actually act as a deterrent. Sometimes that self-criticism gets in the way of us moving forward. So instead, working towards developing a more compassionate self-coach that can push us towards our goals more gently and with a sense of care. That's what I'm working on developing in myself too. So that brings me to where I am now. I've fallen behind on my posting schedule, and typically I would have that self-critic come up and be really hard on myself for not meeting those goals. You failed. You didn't meet your goal. However, I'm trying to give myself some grace and say, you've had a busy stretch, you're still working on it, and it's okay that you fell behind. You're going to try to get back on your schedule and just keep moving forward. I've also reconnected with my why and letting that voice be louder than all of the self-questioning ones that come along for the ride. There's a metaphor that comes from acceptance and commitment therapy that's known as passengers on the bus. In it, your life is the bus, you're the driver, and all of those self-questioning, self-critical, comparing, limiting thoughts and stories that we tell ourselves are the passengers. So as you're driving towards your values, you can say, I am the driver. This is important to me. And you can just allow all of those passengers on the bus to continue their chatter even as you drive towards the things that are important to you in life. I'll post a link to a video that demonstrates this metaphor, and I hope that it resonates with you. Okay, thank you for listening to my first solo show. I would love to hear your feedback, any questions that you have, any topics that you'd like me to go through more, any suggestions for podcast episodes. I am open to hearing it all. I hope that this helps you move through some of your own blocks as you drive towards your own goals and values in life. Thanks for listening. Thank you for joining us on Living with Dr. Monica Shah, where we discuss different ways of living our lives and finding fulfillment in a world that often pushes one. I hope this series gives you more confidence in creating and living a life that fits you, not the mold. If you like what you heard and you're ready to feel seen, inspired, and supported in building your path, don't forget to hit subscribe. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and grow a community of people who are redefining what living means together. So please share and leave us a rating or review. You can also watch on our YouTube channel at Dr. Monica Shah and find episode notes and bonus content at www.drmonicashah.com. Finally, follow me on Instagram at Dr. Monica Shah for more inspiration and resources. Until next time, keep living your unique life. Because no matter what path we're on, it's all just living, and there's more than one way to do it.